She struggled being a single mom and went back to college after my parents divorced. I just saw how men controlled everything and just didn't like that idea. So I became really aware of my circumstances and had to take care of things when I was young. I actually emancipated myself and divorced my parents when I was 15.
Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously, where abundance means living authentically and joyfully, surrounded by a fabulous herd of llamas.
Laura LaTourette is a certified financial planner, proud farm dweller, and lifelong money warrior who's been serving the LGBTQ plus community long before it was trendy. She built her firm, Family Wealth Management Group, on the radical idea that financial planning should speak human, not jargon.
When she's not helping people turn financial chaos into clarity, you'll find her on her llama-filled farm, living proof that authenticity and abundance can go hand in hand.
Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you so much. Oh gosh, what an introduction. Oh, thank you so much. Good to see you
try.
guys.
Put some glitter on that intro.
Likewise, it's great to see you as well. I will say, just from a personal story, John and I left a financial advisor because after a year and a half, we had not heard a single word from them. And during that time period, marriage equality passed, and we didn't even hear from that advisor, Do you think you're going to get married? How will that change your financial planning? And
Yes.
so I would want, I guess I would want to ask you, what would you wish more financial advisors understood about working with the LGBT community or with their clients in general?
Well, I think you can make money in it anyway. There's just so many ways. You know, Advocacy is so important. It's important to me as a person. That's kind of like part of my passion is to be an advocate for someone. So, I just put that first. I took hospice training. I was a hospice volunteer for a couple years because I wanted to really understand end of life. And I knew I wasn't close to my parents and that experience might not happen. So I wanted to experience with other people. If you can be there for someone in their toughest times in life, that is so it gives you so much. And so I don't see how people can't do that. What I do see though is the younger generation. I'm 65. I'm old. A lot of the age, of the financial planners today, they're aging out. And the younger people coming in, they're doing more planning. They're doing more life planning. They're interested in working with just a few people. They don't have to work with 1,000 people to make all this money. I only have 108 households. And that's what I say to the young folks. Do it the way you want to do it. And the industry has changed too. Fee-based is easier today than it was years ago. We charge for planning, which years ago when I first started, someone was like, well, several people, you can't move up to the mountains and charge a fee for financial planning. No one will pay it. I'm like, okay, then I'll do one a year. But I did it anyway. Now they do it all the time, right? Now we pay for financial planning advice. We have really good software that can help show things. So the industry's moved too in a really good direction, I think, as far as helping human beings in transitions in life.
So you've shared before that you watched your mother struggle financially in the 1970s, and that shaped your relationship with money. How did that shape your relationship with money and the financial decisions you made as a young adult?
Oh gosh, she struggled being a single mom and went back to college after my parents divorced. I just saw how men controlled everything and just didn't like that idea. So I became really aware of my circumstances and had to take care of things when I was young. I actually emancipated myself and divorced my parents when I was 15, put myself in foster care because I realized that I was not in a safe place and I would have to make sure to figure out finances, right? So I've always been super independent. I've always been radically independent about money and making sure that I'm making decisions and choices of where I'm going to live and what I'm going to do. Yeah, it started really young because I was not going to just, do what they wanted me to do because the men decided they could control all the money, So I was going to have to figure it out on my own and make sure that I had enough money to take care of myself.
Yeah. So you were Miss Independent, like Kelly Clarkson sings long before she sang about it, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yes.
radically independent.
So what did that mean to you? Being determined to control your money? Because I think there are a lot of people out there who say, I want to control my money, but then something else seems to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think my parents made me strong because, the lack of care, right? So, I just realized that, it was up to me what I was going to do. So, I was an entrepreneur really young, and I didn't go to college. So, I thought, "Well, how am I gonna do this?" So, I studied people. I studied, I found mentors, and I decided I needed to come in the financial services industry because I really had to understand how to handle money and also, what was my relationship to money? How did I build that rather than just, I don't think life's about finding yourself. I think it's about creating yourself. So, how would I put together this person with integrity, honesty, and wealth when I didn't come from that? So, I just started thinking about that at a young age and just started creating my own jobs and my own career and then came into the financial services industry in 1993.
I'm curious, you said you didn't come from that. That wasn't in your background. You didn't get that from your parents. Where
Mm.
did you get that level of wisdom, especially at such a young age? Because so many I was dumb, and if I didn't have any support from my mom and dad, I would have made more mistakes. So where did you get that? And what could an LGBTQ plus person who's living on the streets today maybe, or who maybe aren't getting support from mom and dad, what can they get from your story?
Well, I think I just had to trust. And then also, I mean, it's funny because I didn't have money. I ate at the neighbor's house. I found other things. I might steal something at a grocery store on the way. You could walk because I walked to school, but I also panhandled. I was panhandling when I was 10, looking for money to buy french fries. I went to a school right next door to the University of Wisconsin. So in Milwaukee, I grew up in the city. So it was what everyone did, we're talking gosh, I was born in 1960. So by 1970, college campuses were full of all sorts of good fun. And I hung out there a lot and panhandled and ate French fries. And, so I just learned that if I wanted to do something, I just went off and did it. I really, you know, it wasn't courage. It wasn't those things, I think it was just I didn't know any better, so I just did it anyway, you know?
Yeah. So,
Um,
and so in
'Cause you're
some
hungry.
regard,
Yeah, when you're hungry, you wanna eat, right? So you
Yeah.
just find ways to do it, and if you don't depend on your parents because they're not really good at not all parents are good at being parents. They might be good people, they might have learned later in life, all those things, but, we are inhuman I mean, we're not inhuman. But we're imperfect human beings. And my parents were certainly like that. So, I think I just did it out of preservation of self.
So, folks, if you're just tuning in, this is Living Not So Fabulously, where we mix real money talk with a dash of glitter. We're speaking with certified financial planner and warrior of the underserved, Laura LaTourette. And so, Laura, there was something that you talked about there that kind of triggered a thought in my head, that you were almost forced into realizing what the value of money was because you didn't have it. You knew what it took to get that dollar, to get that food, to get that education. And I'm just curious, do you feel like that maybe is something that's lacking in the world today?
Well, I think sometimes people don't realize the choices that they can make a difference. And I don't care what age you are. I just I never felt like a victim. I never wanted to be a victim, I wanted to, have a better life, and I just figured it was up to me to do that. So I just figured I needed to find a way to do that, and it just I think sometimes people today are afraid maybe of who they are, or that they have circumstances of trauma, so they stay in it. I just didn't want to stay in it. That was part of my circumstances, but it wasn't who I was. There
Mhm.
was a time I got married very young for 5 months. It was a horrible marriage, 16 years difference in between us. And I was groomed to be this wife person in a straight marriage, and it didn't work for me. So rather than staying in this horrible, traumatic, you know, place, I left and I lived on the street for a while. I lived in a car, but that was safer and it felt better to me than it did to live with the circumstances I did. So, I tell my story to clients, I tell my story to people so that they know, it's not where you came from, it's who you are and where you're going. That's more important, right? And there's an abundance of money. There's an abundance of wealth. You just have to, be the one to say, I'm going to do it, I guess. Is
Mm.
my answer.
Yeah. So you bring up a couple of interesting points here. Your childhood and leaving the quote unquote unsafe situation of life of childhood with your parents, and then leaving what you consider to be an unsafe space with your marriage. How did that affect you becoming a financial planner and wanting to help other people with planning?
Right, I know. Well, I wanted to work with people who, we don't wanna say self-made because 'cause we're not doing it by ourselves, but I wanted to work with people who had, a spiritual advantage to a painful childhood, that had grit and were kinda scrappy. So, I actually left that marriage a long time ago, got remarried, to another man, had 2 beautiful children, came out as lesbian. I was like, I have a hole in my heart. I'm sorry, but this is just not who I am. As much as I'm trying to do this thing that society says I'm supposed to, I just can't." So when that happened and I talked to my former husband, he understood and he was very loving. He's like a brother to me. He still is. He's a wonderful person. Um, so I decided it was time for me to go out on my own and bring the kids with me. I met my wife, who we're together today, on the llama farm. And so I said to self, I don't want to take his money. I don't want to take his retirement. That was something we decided to do together. I need to really learn this. So I then went into learning about certified financial planner. It was a brand new designation back then, and I thought, "Well, that's a curriculum, that's something I can learn, and if I need to learn it, I can teach it to others." So I would teach it to other women in transition who were divorced or widowed and had no clue to understand money. I went into the LGBT community and said, "This is who I am as a person, I will help you." There was a lot of entrepreneurs, so I would help them build their wealth, while they were building their business. And so just kind of became a natural thing for me. It wasn't something that I did, in a formal way until I went through CFP school, which wasn't until I got my certification when I was 44. So, I mean, I have always lived that alternative lifestyle, that other road. So I do attract clients like that. I attract clients who did it that way too, or they've inherited money and don't know what to do with it, those kinds of things. And I'm so thankful I'm out in the LGBT community nationwide because I have clients from all over the country that come to find me. And if we're a good fit, we do financial planning. I help them with their investments. And if we're not, that's okay too.
So hold that thought, Laura. We'll be right back. I want to pick up where what you're just talking about. Welcome back to Living Not So Fabulously. We're talking with certified financial planner, entrepreneur, and llama farmer, Laura LaTourette. So you were just mentioning that you want to be completely authentic with your clients. You tell them a lot about your personal finance story, growing up, how you got into the industry, the type of people that you want to help. Um, what does that experience look like? What does that look like professionally and personally? Because I think for a lot of financial advisors, um, because we have worked in the industry and have seen a number of them, and we see many of them on the outside in the way in which they are pitching the world. It seems that the dollar is the only thing that they're concerned about, but you seem to have a different focus here. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when I started to open my practice and decide what I wanted to do, what I've always done, who do I want to spend time with? How do I want to spend my day? I probably built it more slowly than other folks did, but I'm fine with that because I work with people I like. So rather than having a minimum or have all this stuff that had to do with money, when my clients, potential clients come in, we actually also sit in a living room situation rather than this, stuffy old, snobby boardroom look. So when they first come in, they're like, "Ooh, this is different," and I don't want to know about their money. I just want to know who they are. I want to know about their money story. I want to know if they'll meet me heart to heart. Because if they're not going to be vulnerable and show some of their stuff, then I can't work with them very well. So I do a lot of that up front, and that's what clients love about it. I share my story because there's a lot of shame around money. There's a lot of shame around not knowing what to do financially. And none of us did when we were kids or in our 20s or 30s. I mean, 30s, you're starting to really ramp up. But, when you're a kid, you don't know much about that stuff. So to tell people that, I panhandled or I lived in a car, they're like, and now you're here on this beautiful llama farm? And I'm like, yeah, because I just knew that that's where I wanted to be, and so I kinda give them permission, to have failures, to get rid of the shame when it comes to money, to take their money and learn what they're doing with it so that they know. I always tell people that you're spending money on things you value, whether it's, conscious or unconscious. So let's look at that first, look at the current picture, and then what do you wanna spend it on, right? It's your choice. And so I think part of that then just opens them up to a human, we're human beings. We're just here together and I'm helping them walk through some pretty bad and pretty tough conversations with family and their own lives. So it's different than the money because actually, the investments are not that hard. I know people say they are and all this stuff. They're really not.
You're
So,
pulling the
that
curtain back.
part
Stop
almost
it.
is well, we have calculators and software. I mean, we've got stuff we can do with portfolios. It's the people and the expectations of their money and family dynamics and health. I mean, I've got 5 clients with Parkinson's right now, helping to deal with families and them with these stages as they continue on is a lot more important to them than, if the S&P is up or down, you know?
Yeah. I want to pivot just a little bit in career planning. So, if I'm connecting the dots correctly, you panhandled, you were living in your car at one point. And I think you said you didn't go to college. You don't have a college degree, but you're a financial planner. And the way you're describing your job, I can see a lot of LGBTQ plus students thinking, well, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be a financial advisor who just plays
Like,
golf and collects all only cares about the dollar. I would actually want to help people. This is a career you can go into that you don't necessarily need to go to and rack up $100,000 in student loan debt and actually still get a decent salary. Can you elaborate on that a little bit to somebody who's trying to figure out what their path in life is and if they might want to consider becoming a financial planner?
Absolutely. So I got my CFP in 2004 and then they changed it. Then you had to have a bachelor's. So today you have to have a bachelor's to get into the CFP programs. The CFP programs, you can have certificate programs or get a college credit. It just depends. I think there's like 250 different programs now across the country. So things have changed, which is great. if you don't have the college, undergrad, you can still go into things like financial therapy, financial counseling. I mean, there's still a lot of, personal finance. There's a lot of good things out there for education to help you understand how you want to work with clients. But I did it before the undergrad was needed. And now, in here we are in 2025. I'm not sure that an undergrad is that important. But again, I didn't have one. My kids do, but I didn't have one. But I do think that the curriculum is really tough, and it's a tough exam and all those things. So I wish there was some way to have some folks who want to come in the industry maybe challenge it. I know when I did mine, I went down to the university in Atlanta, and they're like, "You're gonna do what? You're like 42 and you have children and you have a business and you have to drive an hour and a half." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is gonna be a piece of cake if I can do all that." So sometimes it's just, I think people can get in this industry and look to how to help people, and get the designations they need, that are available today, or at least the education.
Yeah. Well, Laura, I will say we know that the work know some of the work that you're doing with the CFP board and the community, and we're very thankful for that. And we thank you for joining us today and sharing your money story. I think that the important lesson here, if you are in financial services or in the financial service industry, especially if you are a financial advisor, ask yourself, why are you in it? Is it just the money, or do you have actually a purpose or mission? And take a lesson from Laura and really understand your clients, learn about them, because when you do, you will not only keep them, but you'll win others.
And for our LGBTQ plus listeners and viewers, if you're thinking about a career, we highly encourage you to consider getting into financial planning because it is so much more than numbers. It is way more about people. Thanks for tuning in. If you have questions or guest suggestions for us, just email yfpodcast@yahooinc.com.
If you like what you see, scan the QR code to follow Yahoo Finance podcasts and more videos and expert insights, because when you do, you'll discover your own path to financial joy. Llama herd optional, but highly encouraged. And until next time, stay fabulous.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.